There's a world that exists outside of us. It's solid, unchanging, independent of what we think. And then there's the world that our mind creates, shaped by our emotions, memories, assumptions, and past experiences. Most of the time, those mental filters can help us to make sense of life. But sometimes they bend reality. They color what we see, they distort what we feel, and quietly shape the story that we tell ourselves. In this episode, we explore why the brain gets truth wrong, how past experiences shape what we see, and how we can realign our perceptions with what is actually true. Because becoming aligned with reality isn't just psychology, it's wisdom, and it's essential for a meaningful life. What is this that our brain gets wrong, this truth? What is truth?
Well, one of the main themes that's going to be running throughout this series is truth in terms of two aspects. So mind independent, let's start off with that. Or a simpler term might be objective reality.
Okay.
So that's the reality that exists regardless of whether we think about things or not, regardless of whether human beings are around or not. So you think about whether the sun rises, whether mountains exist, whether the rivers flow. These are not dependent on minds existing.
You would think that people know this already, that would be the only reality out there, that we would accept. Is there another reality that maybe would conflict with that or kind of cause confusion?
Well, there are people and schools of thought that suggest that there is no reality outside of the mind. That's not what we're going to be assuming in our discussion. Now, the mind-dependent reality...
Mind-dependent reality.
Yeah.
Now, the other one was objective.
Objective. Now, this is mind-dependent reality. A simpler term for that is subjective reality. Mind-dependent reality is the reality that we experience through our filters. Yeah.
So it's how we perceive reality, how we interpret the world out there. Would this be the reason why there are those who believe in the mantra, you have your truth, I have my truth, we're both right? Or like, because it's mind dependent, there are so many minds, so we all have our own truths, therefore they believe all of those truths can be correct at the same time.
So we can definitely have all our own truths. That's possible. But the question is, does your truth or your subjective truth, does that align with what is actually out there? And this is the topic of our discussion today. How our brains or minds filter reality can sometimes, for most of the time, get it right, but quite a lot of the time, more often than we'd like to admit, we can get it wrong.
So it seems like you're making the assumption that we have to become aligned with the objective reality out there. That's the gold standard. That's what we have to reach. Why can't we just have our own truths, subjective realities, and just go about life accepting that whatever your reality is, we have to accept it? Why can't we just do that?
Well, we could, and in my view, that would cause a lot of problems because you only have one reality. I'll give you a simple example. If I have a friend who I have seen isn't talking to me, hasn't called me, hasn't contacted me, my experience of that or my subjective interpretation of that might be something like, I've done something wrong. They don't like me, or they're angry with me. They feel something negative towards me. But what if that doesn't align with the actual mind-independent truth or the reality? What if that person's suffering a bereavement? What if they're having a bad day or they're ill? Which is the reality, the actual reality, the objective reality. If my reality, if I insist that that's true, when this is true, there's going to be a misalignment. Now, if I behave towards my friend as if he's done something wrong to me when he's actually having a bereavement, then we have a problem, don't we? So the
it's going to escalate the situation.
Right.
It's going to create more animosity between you two, destroy relationships.
Relationships
So
suffer,
you can
yeah.
see where this is going.
Yeah.
If we refuse to align our perceptions with objective reality, and we stick to what our personal truths are.
Right. Yeah. Of which there can be many interpretations based on, your own experiences, and we'll come to that in a moment. And that can happen at an individual level. It can happen within families. It can happen between groups. It can happen between countries. And so that alignment between what we subjectively believe to be true and what's actually true is really important for kind of functioning in society and relationships.
I mean, so we can see the importance of coming to that objective truth, understanding what is real. I mean, that's why your job exists. That's why you do what you do, isn't it? To bring people who are misaligned back to alignment.
Yeah. And we'll give some examples later on when there is a significant misalignment between what one believes to be true with what's actually true. And in my work as a clinical psychologist, I tend to see people when things are misaligned, when things are going wrong. So misalignment with reality is a major factor or component that contributes to the development of mental health problems.
Right.
So what we're doing in therapy is helping people realign themselves to what's actually there so that they can function with what's actually happening, not what they believe to be happening.
It kind of, as an analogy, because I've done photography since I was young. It reminds me of photography, like of a camera. Correct me if I'm wrong in using this analogy. A camera, it records the world out there. But depending on, as you mentioned, I think earlier when you mentioned filters,
Right.
you mentioned the way things are interpreted. So like in a camera, depending on the lens, the quality of the lens, the age of the lens, depending on the aperture, if it's open or closed, the speed, the ISO, even the presets in the camera, the sensor as well. It may give different interpretations to the view it took, the output. Like, you have, I'm sure our viewers would know, because everybody has a phone with different
Different filters. Yes.
Different filters, yeah.
Yes.
Different filters. You've got sepia filter, which kind of like makes things a bit old, and you've got black and white. You've got a dull down color one, and you've got vibrant ones. So really, the camera interprets the world in its own way, depending on its settings. It doesn't record the world kind of raw with all the information.
Yeah. I mean, if that analogy works really well in that there is so much information out there in the world, so much sensory information, and that filter is needed to make sense of what's out there. Like cameras and our eyes only see a certain wavelength of light. We don't see all of the wavelengths of light. We see a subsection of that. Yeah, and our cameras, our eyes, our visual kind of sensory apparatus, our eyes will take that in, and as you said, will filter that information so it makes sense to us. But the addition to that analogy, to the camera analogy, is that the brain or the mind is not just waiting to see the world. Yeah, we're not just waiting to be pointed somewhere to see what's out there. What the brain is doing, and what modern neuroscience has really turned on its head, is shedding the light on what the brain is actually doing on a moment-by-moment basis. The brain is actually predicting what it's going to see before it even sees it, and just uses what it sees through the lens to verify what it predicts. We are constantly, in other words, making guesses about what's going to happen next. And if our eyes and our ears hear and see what we expect, we have a smooth flow. When we see or hear something that we don't expect, we're like, "Ooh, didn't expect that. That's a surprise." We then incorporate that into our experience, And the next time we experience that surprise, we're like, I've seen that before. I've learned that. And that's the whole basis or the process of learning. And we've got everyday examples of that. For example, predictive text. That you're typing your text, and then your iPhone is guessing
what you're going to say next.
What you're going to say next.
Yeah.
It tries to autocomplete.
Depending on what you've written before.
Right.
On your style of writing.
Yeah. Depending on your style of writing, depending on the likelihood that it'll be this word spelled in this way. So in other words, it's prior knowledge. It's using prior knowledge and prior experience to predict what's happening, what it thinks is going to happen in the future. And for the most part, the more it learns about you and the way you write, the more accurate it becomes. You're training it to become more accurate as you feed it more information. And that's essentially how our minds are predicting what's out there.
So is that why we would jump to conclusions, as they say?
Yeah.
Isn't it? We jump to conclusions. We make judgments, predictions.
Yeah. Yeah.
That could also be the reason behind, prejudice as well.
Could be. Yeah, especially if your predictions or what you expect to happen doesn't happen, but you ignore what you see. So for example, if you're expecting someone to be unkind to you, but they were kind to you, and you say, well, that was just an exception, I'll ignore that,
Because he's really a bad person.
Yeah.
He's really something against me.
Yeah. And that's an example of a stubborn prediction that is not corrected by experience or by what you perceive.
So it could also extend to, a group of people, right?
Can do, yeah.
A race maybe,
Yes.
or even a religion.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you hold on to your prior experiences so strongly that they're resistant to being updated based on what you experience. And again, we'll talk about this more later on. Especially if you've been through trauma experiences or really difficult experiences, those are really hard to let go of, because the cost of you getting that wrong is that you might still be in danger. Yeah, so you hold on to predicting danger, seeing danger where there's no danger there, and then ignoring the fact that the world is safe. You act as if danger is still happening, and that could really... that's another example of a misalignment between objective reality and your subjective reality as a result of past experiences. But here's some everyday experience. Here's some everyday kind of illustrations, just to kind of reinforce the point. So,
yeah, you brought in an image,
yes,
and we're going to show up on the screen now.
Right. So, looking at the screen, you've got a black and white image there that your brain at the moment, whilst you're looking at it, is trying to make sense of what that is.
Because right now it's just black ink or blotches on a white background.
Especially for those who've never seen this before. What your brain is doing right now is it's searching its database, its knowledge base of past experience of this kind of black and white blotch picture. Yeah. And for the most part, people are going to really struggle to make sense of this because they've got no prior experience or knowledge of this. But if we show you the next picture, there, you can see that now. And then we go back to the line drawing. What do you see? Now, most people, the majority of people, will now see the Dalmatian. And the thing about this is you cannot now unsee the Dalmatian. And that's how powerful prior knowledge. Now that you have the knowledge to make that prediction, every time you see this, you will always see the Dalmatian. You will never, ever see the black blotches again in the same way that you saw them when you first encountered this image.
So how does this benefit us? Making these predictions, the brain making these shortcuts. Why is it so important?
Well, I think that the main thing to realize here is that your brain is constantly trying to make sense of the world and searching for meaning from its past experiences. Yeah, that's really, really important there. That your subjective truth or your mind-dependent truth is very much dependent on what you've learned and what you've experienced in the past. Yeah, that if you can be aware of that, then you can have at least some ability to hold that truth without too much certainty. Now let's have a look at this picture. This is another famous optical illusion. Yeah, so that's on the screen now. What do people see? And again, what you see is based or is influenced again by your past experience. But most people will see one or the other. Yeah. Some people might see a young woman looking towards the left. Some people might see an old woman.
Old woman, yeah.
Yeah.
With a really exaggerated features.
Right. It's like a caricature,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Now, the thing is, whether you see one or the other, the picture hasn't changed. Your subjective reality has changed. What you see or your perspective has changed. Now, some people might be able to switch between the two. Now, that is a really important ability, in that the ability to keep our filters aligned with the reality is helped by how flexible our filters can be. Yeah, because there is often more than one way of looking at something, and if you can switch how you can flexibly experience reality, that will help you stay or give you the chance to align with objective reality.
So
Yeah.
basically, it's like saying having an open mind.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good way of putting it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does relying on past experiences, help us to move through life smoothly? How does it benefit us?
So if we have a reminder of what the mind is doing constantly, it's constantly making its best guess at what's going to happen next, based on past experiences. So we can, when it's working well, we don't even realize it's working well because it's happened so smoothly and seamlessly and outside of our consciousness. Yeah. So you can walk into a cafe anywhere in the world. Yeah. Let's say it's a well-known chain of cafes that have a similar layout. Yeah, you go in, you know what to expect, you know what drinks they serve, so you're predicting based on your past experience of that particular cafe. You kind of know what to do, know what the coffee will smell like and how the baristas will greet you. Things feel familiar. Catching a ball is an interesting example. But the more you practice that, what's actually happening is your brain is getting better at predicting where the ball is likely to go, and you put your hand there before it. Yeah. So that's another example of predictive guessing of where things of the future.
So it seems like it's a result of efficiency. You're not trying to look where the till is or where you have to go, or because you've already learned that from the past, like catching a ball.
Yeah.
Your brain isn't wasting power, doing these calculations in physics, trajectory and all that kind of stuff. And that's why practice makes perfect. So we're constantly making predictions.
Yeah.
Everything we're doing.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the more it becomes naturally.
But can you imagine if you had to recreate reality every single time you went into a situation? Or, as you said, you had to calculate, using all these, physics on trajectories on how to catch that ball. It would be incredibly inefficient to do that. Yeah. So the way that the mind works in terms of guessing and refining based on past experience is a really elegant and really efficient way of processing huge amounts of information.
So it's necessary that the mind does this, right? When it works well.
So when prediction works well, as a kind of a summary, bringing it together, is we are using our past experiences to inform what we think is going to happen next. and we are using our flexible kind of perception to course correct if we need to, if we've got our prediction wrong, or to carry on as we are if we've got our prediction right. Yeah. In other words, we are staying as closely aligned with the reality as possible.
So maybe like if I can give some example, I mean, just to make sure that I understand it right. So when prediction works well, it can benefit relationships. It can make relationships more exciting, dynamic, create connections, like when people finish each other's sentences. Or like here in the office, because I've been working with 30 for so long. He's an editor here. And all I have to do is just kind of give him some instructions which would seem cryptic or very bare to other people, but he gets it. Whereas those who are new to the office, if I would give them the same, they'll be confused. And 30 is there to kind of translate it for them. Decrypt it for them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah,
in the nicest way possible, I would say that 30 has become predictable for you.
Right.
And he knows. You've got this alignment with each other that you know what's going to happen before it's even happened.
Yeah.
Because of your experience of each other has become so consistent and that and that creates harmony. Yeah. There is a efficiency in that relationship as well, because what's going to happen next for the most part. We're actually predicting or making our best guess constantly and using our sensory data to verify whether that's true or not. Again, if it's a match, we flow smoothly. If it's a mismatch, the element of surprise, I didn't expect that. That's not a bad thing. It's an opportunity to learn and to incorporate that new information into our knowledge bank and go forward. So the next time we see that or perceive that, we know what to expect. Again, the more you experience and the more you learn from your prediction errors, the more precise you can predict the future going forward.
It's like my daughter. It reminds me of this recent happening. She recently changed a teacher in her school. Her previous teacher, she was always being called, because they were a younger year, so she was being treated with more kind of, how would you call it, affection, would you say? And she got used to that. So with her new teacher now, she's not being called as much. And she got really upset. She thought she was being picked on. She thought the teacher didn't like her. And it was very tempting for me to kind of believe that. But then I had to kind of sit her down and try to help her see, well, maybe it's not. Maybe that's not the case, right? Maybe it's just the way you're perceiving things. But then again, I didn't want to go too far to kind of gaslight her, So I said, all right, let's look at the situation. I gave her some possibilities. Maybe she's not calling you because she wants to give the other students a chance to answer, right? So I said, okay, let's watch the video. Or let's observe it in the next class. The next time she did have a class, which was earlier today in the day, we were observing, I was watching. And every time she was being called, I goes, see, you're being called again. See, you're being called again. So with that, she was in a more positive mood. She was in a happier mood. And hopefully that kind of adds to her bank of experience to not be too sure about what she thinks is real or true, but to kind of be a bit more curious, to have an open mind, that there's a possibility of many other reasons or answers.
And that's such a wonderful example of how we predict or try to make meaning or make sense of this new experience of hers. It's a bit like the dots and the Dalmatian, isn't it? I've not experienced this before. What's my truth? What's my subjective sense of this? And your daughter was making quite negative assumptions, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Assuming that the teacher might not have liked her. That's subjective truth. If that aligns with the reality, and let's say the teacher didn't like her, then you deal with the truth, you deal with the reality. But I'd be very surprised if that was true, right? So, in effect, what you did there was you introduced the possibility of an alternative truth. Yeah. And your daughter was flexible to see that there could be an alternative explanation for why the teacher wasn't calling her as much as her previous teacher. And that goes back to the old woman, young woman, that flexibility to see different perspectives, which is so important there. And how did your daughter then react?
I'm actually thankful that she was flexible, because her mood just changed. You know, after I explained to her and I gave her the alternatives, what could be the reason behind it.
Yes.
And then all the more it was reinforced when she had the class and she saw for herself.
Right.
That was the case.
She
so
saw
she's a bit more
evidence.
balanced. Yeah.
Right.
Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And that's such an important learning point. She actually she did an experiment, in other words, she observed reality and tested it against her truth or her subjective truth. And what was beautiful about that example is that your daughter could see that her subjective truth didn't align with reality, to her relief.
Yeah.
That she was being called. Yeah.
Now, what happens if that doesn't happen? When the misalignment of truth remains, right? There's no course correction.
Yeah.
What are the dangers of that in your practice as a psychologist? What have you seen?
Yeah, and that's the essence, or that could be the beginnings of problems there, because if we add in the behavior component or the action component to those beliefs or assumptions about truth, your daughter might have avoided going to class next time because she was so upset that she was being ignored. Yeah. And when you avoid the opportunity to see reality for what it is, you carry on with your negative assumptions. And we do see a lot of avoidance. And avoidance, you miss out on the opportunity to be challenged by a surprise. In other words, you miss out on the opportunity to learn if there is something to be learned there.
So your negative assumptions are just being reinforced.
Right. Yeah. And in my experience as a clinical psychologist, the more you stay stuck in that vicious cycle, in that loop there, that negative loop, the harder it is to come out from. You take depression as an example. When you have negative beliefs, people don't like me, I'll fail, I'll never get this done. In depression, most of your predictions are towards the negative. You've got a negative filter there. Everything's in dull and black and white.
The camera, yeah.
Right.
Sepia, black and white, lifeless.
Lifeless, exactly. You believe that to be true. Yeah. So what's the point of attempting something? What's the point of seeing your friends if you believe that you're going to be rejected? You then miss out on that opportunity, stay at home, lose your friendships, lose relationships. The net result of that is that you become more depressed and more negative. You predict more negatively, you become more depressed. And the cycle continues. And people can stay in that cycle for years and then believe that that's true because they've never been challenged. The same can go with anxiety. If you've experienced difficult or dangerous or traumatic experiences and you expect or you predict that danger is always going to happen and you stay at home to keep yourself away from danger, you will miss out on the opportunity to learn that the world might not be as dangerous or that people might not be as threatening, and you stay in that vicious loop.
What could that progress into if these things are not fixed or aligned?
Yeah.
What's like the extreme of that, of these problems that you mentioned?
Yeah. In addition to the depression becoming more severe or the anxiety becoming more severe, in my day-to-day work, I work with people who have completely detached from reality. I work in the field of psychosis. So believing things in terms of delusions, where believing things where there is no evidence of their being true in reality. And that's an example of where you're predicting something so much that you believe your prediction so much that you don't even give a chance for reality to correct you. Yeah, you are so convinced by what you predict, you're not even bothering to check or verify whether it's true or not. And that's a complete detachment of reality. And in those cases, in those situations, when things get that severe, intervention is often necessary. A bit like what you did at the very early stages with your daughter, where you intervened.
Thankfully early.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if that set in, that could cause problems.
You can see, yeah. That's really powerful, isn't it? Imagine becoming so detached from reality. You believe things that are not even there.
Yeah.
Even if the evidence shows you otherwise, you'll just ignore it.
Yeah. And bringing it back to mind-independent or objective reality, you get further and further away from objective reality, and you are convinced by your subjective or mind-dependent reality without checking. That's really, really dangerous.
You know, going back to the camera analogy, could it be like when the sensor is exposed to the same image, it would actually burn an image on there that doesn't exist?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if it's not there, even if you're pointing at something else, it would see that same image.
Yeah. And that points to the faulty apparatus, the faulty equipment. And we know in psychosis that we often use what we call the highlighter pen metaphor, right? Where things that we should be ignoring, we're not ignoring, you know.
That's a good one.
It's like, it's highlighting things that are irrelevant. It's like, oh, someone walked past the door. What does that mean? Under normal circumstances, that's just a person walking past the door. But because we have such a powerful prediction that something's wrong or there's some sort of threat there, everything is highlighted as a potential danger. So yeah, I agree.
While at the same time, you're ignoring the important parts, which discount those negative thoughts, isn't it? Which should have been highlighted.
Right. So that person who walked, past the door might have been on the way to see their family member, and you saw that and you thought, I'll ignore that, just to make it make sense or fit with your prior prediction.
So it's an extreme case of focusing on what's negative.
An extreme version of seeing what's not really there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a general principle here. Yeah. These experiences are highly emotionally charged. So in this case, if you're under threat, you're going to feel fear and anxiety. You know, if you feel like you've been betrayed, you're going to feel really angry. If you feel like you're at a loss, you're going to feel incredibly sad. When emotions are so strong, that can be an additional filter through which reality is distorted.
That's why there's it's generally believed, it's known that strong emotions make us irrational. Emotions can sometimes make us forget what is real, what makes sense. It reminds me of songs that reflect that, like Foolish Heart, Head Over Heels, right? You lose your footing on what's rational.
Yes.
Famous sayings from like Blaise Pascal. The heart has its reasons, which reasons know not. And especially the Bible speaks about that all the time. In Jeremiah 17:9, it tells us that the heart is deceitful. The heart, obviously, which refers to our emotions, our carnal wants and desires. The Bible consistently tells us how the heart can deceive, how anger clouds judgment, right? And the Bible tells us that we shouldn't trust too much on what we feel, because what we feel may lead us to what is wrong, what can destroy us.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are many everyday examples of that. How we're always advised to never send a response to an email if we're feeling angry.
Yeah.
Or make any decisions when we're highly emotionally charged.
Yeah, whether you're too happy or too sad.
Or too sad or too anxious or too angry, yeah. When we are highly emotional, emotion takes over the prediction machine. Yeah. So you often have these reasonings or this rationalization where you come out with, I feel in danger, I feel scared, therefore there must be danger out there.
It must be real.
It must be real. Yeah. I feel angry, they must have done something bad to me. Yeah, it's completely the other way around.
I'm hurt, so therefore that person is bad who hurt me.
Yeah. That really is a barrier or a fog that can cloud, again, mind-independent reality or objective reality, because your subjective reality has been contaminated with emotion. So here's the trade-off, isn't it? Because in order for this to work efficiently and to be tuned to detecting mind-independent reality, we need to have a very tuned and well-maintained filter. And that is our responsibility, isn't it?
So it's our responsibility to make sure that the apparatus and the filters by which we see the world and interpret it, they have to be calibrated, working as intended, which is they're always in line with reality. So what does it mean that they have to be calibrated? They have to be in tune.
Well, in order for you to take responsibility for calibrating, you need to accept that our minds are fallible, that there is a possibility of being biased or uncalibrated. And many people go through life not realizing that, taking their own subjective truths to be true, without realizing that might just be one way of looking at things. So the first step is accepting that we can never really fully trust our own judgments.
So it's about being self-aware.
Yes.
In other words, that what makes us the way we are is what we went through before. And that could be wrong. I mean, there could be problems with that.
There could be problems with that, absolutely. And it doesn't do any harm to check, to reflect, to be self-aware, to never to take things at face value, to verify, is this true? To question, to be curious, to be humble, and never really be too confident in what you think you know without verifying that.
Those sound very close to biblical principles. Humility,
Yes.
you said. The ability to admit that you're wrong, that there could be something else out there. Curiosity as well.
Yes.
The desire to learn,
Yes.
to know more.
To seek
Because
wisdom.
you know that what you know already may not be enough, may not be everything.
Yeah.
You said also, did you say dialogue?
Dialogue, absolutely. And how, we can have self-dialogue, self-reflection, and that's another thing we're always encouraged to do, isn't it? To kind of self-reflect, self-evaluate. But we can also do that, like you did with your daughter. We can do that with our family members. We can do that with our friends in groups, with people to kind of bounce ideas off. I have this assumption. I'm wondering if this is true. But in order for you to do that, you've got to, as you said, admit to the possibility that you might be wrong. And a lot of people struggle to do that. Because what does being wrong mean for a lot of people? Being wrong means that there's something wrong with you. But actually, what we've learned from this discussion here is that prediction errors are essential to learning. We need to learn from mistakes. We need to be able to incorporate those surprises to make our prediction machine, our brains, more precise going forwards. And the more we can, and the only way we can do that is by, as you said, being humble, being open-minded, curious, and engage in dialogue. Ask questions. Think together.
That's another biblical concept or teaching, right? Dialogue. I mean, we're always being taught to have open communication, to talk.
Yeah.
Which is why also in the church we're being encouraged to have time with the family, even if we are living in busy times. We can create quality time, even if it's not much time, but the quality is there. Having open dialogue, creating trust within members of the family so that they can open up.
It goes back to that wonderful conversation you had with your daughter, that space to reflect on something that she found really difficult and even upsetting, not to try to jump to solve her problem, but to allow her to recognize it for herself, which is so powerful. It's what we aim to do in therapy. People often think that, I have the answers. I don't have the answers. I don't know what the reality is. All I can do is foster an environment where they can come to the realization of objective truth on their own. They often say that the aim of therapy is alignment with truth. And the stronger or the closer you are to truth, the more relief you'll have from your trouble.
And that was another thing too. I mean, even if the teacher did have a problem with my daughter, when I heard how she felt, it was very tempting for me to maybe speak to the teacher or kind of make kind of clear all the difficulties in her way. But then I thought, no, even if she is being unfair to her, we have to equip our daughter with the tools to deal with people like that, because she will come across people like that in the future. And she can't blame her failures on external forces and other people. We have to equip our children with the tools to overcome adversity, right? To build that resilience and strength in them.
And that's so important, because we've been talking a lot about questioning our assumptions to make sure that they are aligned with the reality. But what if reality is difficult?
And it is.
And it is, reality is often a challenge. And I agree completely that, equipping our children to manage reality rather than shy away from it or avoid it makes them more resilient and stronger going forwards.
So with everything that we've discussed today, what can our viewers reflect upon? What can they take away with them and put into practice so that they can, begin this journey of realignment? Some may have to realign more than others, but I think it's something that we can all benefit from if we practice these things. What are some of your tips and suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, the first one I always come to, is probably the easiest one to notice, is notice your emotions. Emotions can really color our predictive processing in unhelpful ways. So when you catch yourself feeling or thinking, I feel it, therefore it must be true, pause, ask yourself, what is this feeling? If it's anxiety or fear, and if it's safe to do so, check if there's actually something to be afraid of. If you're fearing rejection, for example, and you don't want to talk to someone because you fear being rejected, and you feel so fearful that you're then sure that you're going to be rejected if you talk to that person or say hello to that person. Pause. Ask yourself, what's the likelihood of that? And what would happen if I go up to that person and say hi and start a conversation? What if you were wrong and you struck up a conversation and you had a wonderful interaction? That's what you would have missed out if you believed in your emotions. So emotional reasoning is always what I tend to start with. Always check your filters. The idea that you have a filter is already a big first step, and that your filters are prone to bias. Your filters are prone to being colored by emotional reasoning, and your filters are prone to drawing on past experiences that might not be helpful. Be open to course correction. Check for the evidence, like what you did with your daughter. She observed what happened in the next class to see if the evidence really supported her belief that her teacher didn't like her. And she found, with great relief and joy, that her assumptions weren't true, which is great, isn't it, going forwards?
One thing I try to live by and also teach, never be too sure about yourself. We talked about that earlier on.
We did.
I mean, even if sometimes we know 95% of the story, we automatically conclude that we know the whole story already.
Mm-hmm.
But then the 5% that we don't know about it could turn the whole thing upside down.
Right.
Could change the whole scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a very powerful bias that we have. And there's a name for that. It's a jumping to conclusions bias. Even if you're 95% sure that your conclusion is right, there is a possibility you could be wrong. And it's always worth checking, I would agree. It's always worth checking. You know, I guess another thing that we've talked about is the way in which our prediction machine is updated, is made more precise. It's made more precise by error, by mistakes in what we predicted. We thought we were going to experience this, but we didn't. That was a mistake. Those kinds of mistakes are valuable. Mistakes are essential to making our prediction machine more precise. Imagine you're trying to become more skillful at a sport, let's say tennis. The more you practice, what you're actually doing is you're honing your prediction machine whenever you get your stroke wrong. It's an opportunity to learn from that error and that mistake. And that goes with everything. Mistakes aren't a bad thing. They are an opportunity for learning.
Is that what you were saying earlier on? Value surprises.
Absolutely.
Is that what you mean? When you're predicting one thing, but then it doesn't turn out that way, you're surprised.
Yeah.
So you evaluate, you embrace it. Okay.
Yes.
Update.
Yes. Don't ignore that. Because some people, they're like, that was just a coincidence.
A one-off.
A one-off. That might actually reflect reality that you're ignoring there. We've talked about this as well, and I think this is key. Practice humility and curiosity. Remind yourself, what I'm seeing is my best guess. Yeah, I might be right, but I also might be wrong. You know, that little shift can keep your filter flexible and open to updates. It doesn't get too rigid because it's always looking for an opportunity to learn something new. I think that's really important.
But then that goes without saying, even though we have to be open-minded that there could be something else out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we discussed there is an objective truth. Once we found that objective truth, we've discovered it fairly, it's clear, based on a given reference, we should hold on to it. We should stand up for it. Because, I mean, if we don't, then we're not really standing up for anything. We'll just be basically going through life, flip-flopping, easily swayed by whatever anyone says.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, although being flexible is important, but being rigid in what is already established, already true, obviously based on a reference of truth, that's what we have to hold on to.
Absolutely. And that brings us full circle, doesn't it? Yeah. Because at the beginning, we did say that the aim or the gold standard, the true verification of our filter is how closely aligned to objective reality it is. And when we've discovered it, as you've just said, so you've got to stick to it.
Stick to it. Live by it.
Yeah.
The search for truth begins with humility. The humility to admit that we don't see everything clearly. It means staying open, curious, and willing to let reality correct us. But once truth is revealed, tested, grounded, and anchored in a reliable reference, humility also means holding on, standing firm, staying aligned, and making the sacrifices needed to live by what is real. Yes, a mind open to learning, but a spirit steady enough to remain faithful to the truth once it's been found.